So please welcome Jules Arnes to the show. Welcome, Jules.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too, all the way from Colorado.
Mm.
I've found you on a podcast right away, was like full body yes. And I connected and was so grateful to hear back and to schedule this as soon as I could. Like, it was almost like when it was a remembering. I don't know how to explain it, but I know you even talk about remembering. And when you meet somebody that does something to your soul, like that's what you did to me. So that, and when I meet people like that, and I go start learning more about, I wonder why, I wonder what it is that she drew so much, like why you were like a magnet to me. And then I'm like, I get it. And I get why I want to share you with everyone in this community because they will understand why. So, what I would love for you to do is start with, because I feel like your childhood kind of sets the tone of really what you're doing now. And, you know, I just feel like you're so, um, there's so much depth to what you do that I feel like showing kind of how you grew up, the different little things that you started realizing, like, oh, I'm a little different, and how you didn't graduate from high school. I mean, I love it. So take us on a journey and
I'll,
pick up the breadcrumbs, Jules.
but the life story. Yeah, so first I'll start all the way from when I was born. Is when I was born, I actually had a conscious thought that this life was going to be different for me, if that makes sense. And I could tell that where my consciousness was different than where my mom's was. And that I literally was born awake and
Wow.
would have to, and I had started adjusting consciousness at that young of an age. And it wasn't something that I really understood or even thought about as I was doing it. It was just a natural thing that I did. And come about 5 years old was when I first met, I guess you could say, my star family, if you will. And they were the first ones where I really felt like at home and that I could communicate from this place that I was holding. And they are actually the ones that gave me the evolution technology, which is how I used scalar waves to convert the cells, if you will, or awaken the cells, like kind of shift them from observation to expression of our original design. And from
Mhm.
there, it really just went to a normal kid's life, I guess. I mean, I thought it was normal. I played with the fairies and I played in the woods. And it wasn't until I was about in middle school that I recognized that I was way more different than I thought I was.
Right.
And that it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, like going into that space and I'm very telepathic, so I can hear people's thoughts. And that's when I realized that most people aren't making conscious decisions. They're just reacting to life. And that felt very, I guess, isolating because I wanted to be around people that lived in an authentic space and lived from a place of truth, and there was none. And
Mm.
not even my best friend. And that was uncomfortable, like recognizing that. And then, of course, once I got to high school is when I had my first drink of alcohol, and it turned off the sensitivity and my heightened state of consciousness. And it was the first time that I felt like I connected to the kids that were my age. I can even remember my best friend calling and talking about the night before. And I said, it was the first time that I ever felt normal. And I wanted more. Like, I wanted more feeling normal because that's what I think
Wow.
every kid wants, right?
Right. Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh. Continue. It keeps getting better. So don't stop.
So from there, I I started partying, right? And that brought me to psychedelics, which became my drug of choice. Don't listen. If I was way different. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I would
Like
take
what kind?
acid was actually my drug of choice,
Oh
if you
my
will.
gosh.
It was I would take acid and go to school, and I would do everything I could to master the trip, and nobody ever knew that I was tripping on acid, right? And I
Wow.
just do it. And so what it did though is it made me see consciousness as something that first of all could be mastered,
Right.
and that I could take my experiences of mastering the trip, is what I would call it, master the trip. And then once I would master the trip and I would come out of it, that I could do the same thing when I wasn't on it. And so I started mastering life through consciousness, and that I realized it wasn't any different, that the field that we go to when we master a trip, and I call it like popping up on top, because if people have done psychedelics, a lot of times they'll let the medicine guide them,
Right.
and they'll go through the journey and they have this thing. But what I like to do is when I start to get pulled into a journey, that I actually move my consciousness so that I'm on top of where every most people stay in this space, and up here it's just very very clean. And then what happens is that little things will want to pull you back into the trip, and then you keep popping back up until you master the field, and then you can actually and have the trip or the psychedelic experience from that sacred field. And that's what I did in everyday life.
Wow.
And then I got kicked out of the house.
Okay.
Oh, darn.
Poor Jules. Kicked to the curb.
Yeah, no, it was
At
actually,
17? I mean, I,
I was almost 17, and it was actually pretty traumatic. I came from a family that I never had to worry about food. I never had to worry about clothing. Like we went on vacations and did all these fun things, and the next thing I know, I have no car, I have no money, no
wow.
anything. And um
How did that happen? So I'm a mom of like a 16 and a 19-year-old, and I'm thinking if they did something like that, and I said, "You're done. You're out of here. No car, no nothing. Just go." I mean,
yeah,
that took a lot of strength as a mother, right? And a dad.
for sure. Yeah, and yeah, my mom and dad were going through a time then too. They ended up actually getting a divorce not too long
Hmm.
after I left. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Hmm.
But we all know that traumatic things, they impact us, right? And they impact the way that we see the world. And but luckily, I it wasn't too long that I recognized that I actually had this exact thought. If I'm bad enough that I got kicked out of the house, then I might have a problem. And
Funny.
so I went to AA and I met my sponsor. I was over at her house and I was sitting on her couch, and I looked down and saw Barbara Brennan's book, Hands of Light. And I looked at her and I said, I know that. I didn't even open the book. I knew it just by looking at the cover, that I knew what it was. And so she opened it up and started showing it to me. And it was like I had already read the book.
Wow.
I'd already not only read the book, but I had practiced the book. And she said, "Oh, you're a healer and you're a seer." And it was the first time that somebody had actually put a name on what I was experiencing and how I had grown up. And so that turned me on. And once you can identify something that you thought made you different was actually a gift, I just went full force all the way in. And so it was just about 7 months later, I met Eva White Desert Eagle, and I started an apprenticeship as she was a Lakota medicine woman. And so I started an apprenticeship with her, and I took all my Reiki classes. So anything I could do to get my hands on how to bring this obsession I had with consciousness into something that I could actually use and, I mean, I guess you could say build a career out of, but at the time I just really wanted to learn.
Right. And you were living in an apartment. Like, how did you find and get a job?
Yeah, I did. So when I was first kicked out of the house, it was almost a month I lived in the basement of a drug dealer's house, and that was really, really scary. And then my dad actually helped co-sign, and I got an apartment with one of my best friends that was 18, and I started working, and I
Huh.
just started living my life.
Wow. Go back to that shaman and who you and when you went to that sweat lodge and when you had to not eat and drink for 3 days and what you experienced on that
Yeah,
mountain.
so it's called a humblechi or a day on the hill, and it's you actually have to apprentice. So I did the apprentice where you prepare for the 3 days on the hill for a whole entire year, and
Oh,
you
wow.
do a lot of sacred journeys, and then you find what they call a supporter, and the supporter does the sweat lodges, and they eat and drink for you while you're on the hill, and then you stay awake for the whole 3 days too, and you go into this other time zone, right? Or I don't know, maybe timeline is a better word for it.
Right.
And so in my blechy, I had a lot of different visions, and uh, one day I was in the middle of, you're just sitting there. You have this little tiny square of saplings that you sit in the middle of. And she was walking up over the mountain and I could see her. I was looking for it and she was kind of coming up. And then she turned into an eagle and flew into the trees that were in front of me. And it's funny, I don't normally talk about this, but when she was sitting and our eyes met was the biggest vision that I had had. And I went into this vision where I was in like a hut and I was having a baby. And I was with another medicine woman and she delivered the baby. And so of course she just gets the baby and she walks out of the hut and she tells me to follow her. So I follow her and she holds the baby up over this cliff, and I was like, oh, she's blessing the baby, and she's like, no, look down. And so I looked down and there was a man climbing up the cliff that had on a mask, and she was like, you have a choice. Are you going to help him up or take your baby? And it was like I got chills just talking about it.
Oh, my.
And I didn't choose, which was the interesting thing. I came out of the vision, and then after Hanblechi, everybody has you go or everybody gets to go to the medicine with Eva and talk about their visions. And everyone was coming out and they're going, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And they were just all so excited. And I go in and I tell her my vision. And she goes, thank you. That was all I got. But ironically, I got pregnant a year later. And at one point, I did end up choosing the baby over the man.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So explain how the eagle, like your definition of what happened at that moment when you saw her tran
Shape
transmute, shapeshift.
shape shift. Yeah, she shape shifts. So, and that's one thing that she never taught shape shifting. She never told anybody that she could shape shift. And it wasn't something that I really thought about afterwards. Like I knew what I had witnessed was, I mean, clearly a very, very high level of consciousness. And to this day, I have no idea how she did it.
Hmm.
I think we will find out though.
Yeah.
I think she definitely is the most advanced human that I have ever met.
Oh, wow. And still alive.
No, she's not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. And that you found her and she crossed your path. She was part of your soul's journey.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Now we need to get to Vale.
Mm, yeah. So Vale.
Unless I'm missing out on any big.
Well, we could go to Rob. I don't think I really talked
Okay.
about
Let's
Rob.
talk about Rob first.
So Rob, he was my best friend, and he passed away in 2015. And after he passed away, I I followed him. So when I was going back to his place right after he died, and I was crying, and he's like, "Don't cry, or you're not going to be able to hear me." And so I felt him, and I knew what he felt like on the other side. And I knew this was, first of all, I'll say this is an agreement that we had, that before we even knew, of course, that it was happening, that I would follow him, and that he
Huh.
would would allow me to follow him and have this experience. And I did, and I followed him. It was like a good month. And it was so interesting feeling all of the different dimensions, if you will, that he moved in, because he kept changing as I was following him. He felt different, he looked different. And finally, we got to a place where I ended up calling the Council of Light, and he stopped. And I could feel that there were 11 other frequencies that he was communicating with. And he said, "Just stay here. I'm going to make sure it's okay for you to come in." And so he came back, and he's like, "Okay, they're gonna let you in." And that's why I called them a council of light, because when I would go in, I could tell I was surrounded by states of consciousness, though there was nothing to see. It was just, you just knew that they were there.
Mm.
And they started communicating to me, and they gave me the alchemy of Ormus. So Ormus is a fifth dimensional element that I now have the alchemy of and use in everything that I make. And so that was the first thing they gave me. And I started ingesting it. So I mastered the alchemy, and I started ingesting it, and I would fall asleep, and I would meet my higher self in my dreams. And she was teaching me how to build a scalar device. And I would wake up from my dreams, and I would write out the diagram. And it was about a week to 2 weeks later, I had built the scalar device. And then it went from there to actually programming the Ormus and putting things like healthy cells or DNA activations. I was programming through the scalar device, the Ormus, and then it just kept going on and on and on from there. But yeah, I think a big shout out to Rob, because
Jeez.
yeah, he's really what started my business as I know it now.
Huh. When you were watching him, when you were following him, when you said he was changing, explain that, what you were seeing as a visual.
Yeah, at first he was very, very physical. I mean, he would even like shut doors. He would write, like if I spilled something on the counter, he would put like a little heart in it. So it was very, very physical in the beginning. And then it kind of moved to, I guess you could say, just more ethereal, more light body-ish. So it wasn't as physical, but it was very electric. So I like when he walked in the room, if you will, I would get like, the goosebumps or something. So it was still physical, but in a different way. And then it started to be more, I guess you could say, light, but without electricity. I don't know how.
Hmm.
So it's like you could tell it was there, but there was no electricity behind it. And then it very much turned into the way that I communicated with my star family when I was 5. It became telepathic. And then when I entered the Council of Light, you had to be at an extremely high state of consciousness to even, first of all, to be able to communicate, but also to not fall asleep, because the frequency was so high. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, where you listen to something that's such a high frequency that a lot of
Right.
times you'll pass out, or because your consciousness can't hold the
Hold that.
frequency.
Right. Uh-huh.
And so that was all of my years of mastering consciousness, was why I could actually get to the place where he was and communicate as well.
Do you still communicate? Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
what is that like?
It's more, I would say because I've had so much practice. I mean, gosh, he just had his 10-year death anniversary. We've been doing it for such a long time. It almost feels like he's more human now than
Hmm.
what that experience was. It's kind of weird. You'd think it would go the other way, but I think I just got so used to the frequency that he's in that it doesn't seem as abstract anymore and it's more real. So it feels more, I guess you could say, human, even though that's clearly not what it is.
Right. But does he give you information to help you on your journey? Like to give you like what kind of what we'll say what Vales said, but
Yeah. Yeah, he does in a different way. Like he's definitely more on the alchemy side, and he gave me all of the first 3 steps of cell ascension. He gave me the foundations of the step by step of how to hold consciousness in an abstract frequency. I wrote my first book on all of his channelings,
oh
and
wow.
he
Okay.
also was the one that was showing that everything is inverted in his own way. So he was showing me that everything has to go back into what I call the God particle. And so dissolving the chakra system and everything through, and basically what he was saying is go back into what Vale then gave it in a very detailed way, but go back into the frequency of 963 and how observation was creating the distortion of our reality. And he also gave me DQ, which is step 2, which is reprogramming the cells, and then own codes. He's very much into numerology. And so
Hmm.
a lot of our conversations will be through numbers.
Oh, neat. Oh, geez. I never heard that story, so thank you. I'm so glad we didn't skip it. Okay, so now we'll go to Vale and what he taught, what happened and how he like passed away and all that. It was
Oh,
one of your kids' friends, right?
yeah, yeah. So Vale, Vale, he passed away on his 22nd birthday. He went to the hospital and they'd given him penicillin and he's allergic to penicillin and he passed away. And after he died, it was interesting because he had literally grown up with my kids and I couldn't remember what he looked like. It was just the weirdest
Hmm.
thing. Every time I would try to like have a memory of him, it was just blank. And we went to his memorial and of course they had a picture of him. And it was just I was looking at his picture and I just like couldn't believe that it was him. I was like, that's not him. It was just the weirdest thing. But it was because I was already communicating with him on the other side. I just didn't know that I was. And so when was trying to picture him as a human, I just couldn't because he was already, when he passed over, he went to his state of mastery almost instantly and had never experienced that before. He was an ascended master. And so it was a different experience.
Wow.
And so when he came to me, I was in my kitchen and he walked in and he's like, it's not supposed to be this way. And I was like, I knew he was talking about that we weren't supposed to die. And I was like, I know, Vale, I know. So show me what you know. And he's like, get a piece of paper and a pen, and I'm going to give you the equation of cell ascension. He's like, I'm going to show you everything. And so I sat down, and somehow I was able to write, but then he was giving me visions at the same time. And the first thing he did was he took me out of the atmosphere so that we were looking down on the earth. And as we got closer, he was showing me how the flower of life was basically creating the matrix. And everyone's like, what? Like the flower of life is this. But what he was showing me is that because we're observing our reality, that we continue to loop, and that it was the only way to actually break out of what we call age, disease, karmic cycles, was to move beyond observation. And he was showing how the flower of life is so inverted that every time that you feel like you break out of the matrix, that you actually just move back into another loop. And he was showing me all of these loops, and then he like pulled me out and he was like, but watch what happens if you do this. And so he put me in the center of the flower of life, and then he moved my consciousness to the other side. And that's when I saw the 12 strand DNA. And he was like, go here. And so I brought my consciousness into the 12 DNA strand system, and observation disappeared. And then all of a sudden, I was holding my consciousness in the expression of source. And I was conscious, I was aware, but I wasn't observing. So I guess you could say in some ways I wasn't conscious, but I knew where I was because it was very, very similar to when I would master the trip. And so from there, he gave me the step-by-step process of cell ascension, which is now called DMT, which is called Divine Molecular Technology, and that we have the ability to turn on our 12 strand DNA system and activate this technology and learn to use it with our consciousness.
Right. And when people hear DMT, they go to drugs, but
Yeah,
you're talking about the energetic, the frequency of DMT.
I am. And I want to say that he actually talked a lot about the chemical of DMT. He was showing that that chemical is released from our pineal gland when we are born. And when we're born, it releases, and it also, of course, has a frequency. And if you actually measure the frequency of DMT, it's 963, which is also the same frequency of source. And that frequency goes into our DNA and activates it so that we have the technology of source in our DNA. And so that all happens when we're born. That frequency releases, it goes into our DNA, and it's there waiting for our consciousness to start participating in the ascension of our physical body. And then when we die, the same thing happens. That same chemical is released, and then the frequency leaves the DNA and then leaves the body, and then our consciousness will follow, and then reconnects with the frequency of source. And what he was showing is that we don't have to die to have that happen. And that's why self ascension is so important, is that we can learn to use this technology. We can use it to activate our consciousness until consciousness is no longer needed. And he's like, consciousness is just a tool. It's the observation of what you really are. And what you really are is this frequency that's transcribed in our DNA. And that when what we can do is we can start to actively participate in the frequency that's there. And the same thing that happens when we're dying, we go and we reconnect with it, that we can actually have that happen in the body. And then that turns on our body as if you want to call it quantum, if you want to call it multidimensional, but we start to experience what our body is in its original design, and that is an expression of source.
Right. So let's explain the 963. So when you're explaining it and how that is the frequency of God, of source, and that is our natural state.
Mhm.
And so when we are looping with our limiting beliefs and we really live at like, if there's 12 DNA strands, we're only living in the one and two, right?
Yeah. So right now we're experiencing the two-strand DNA system, and if you go to the doctor, that's what they're treating 2 of 12, and the other 10 are multidimensional. So they're not ones that are science, though quantum biology is starting to tap into our body as frequency, and you can measure different things like heart and brain coherence and that sort of stuff. But it's beyond what anything that we have that can be measured right now. And when we turn on all 12 strands, we are not going to be what we are right now. Like, we're
Right.
going to be more than this. And but that's the whole point, is that
Right.
we want to. I mean, that's what at least I do. And I think there's going to be some people that want to stay in the human experience. There's nothing wrong with that. It's always going to be a choice. But we're only experiencing about, I think like, let's even say like 8% of what our original design is and was. That lights me up. I mean, I
Oh,
want
me
to know
too.
what that is.
Right. You know, it was so interesting when I was listening. I had a past life regression a couple months ago, and I had one in one of my lives. I was helping people move their frequency, and I saw it above their head. So when I'm looking at this lifetime, it was there were these blue. It was like a ruler, and I was trying to help them raise their frequency. So they were at a 9, and I was trying to move them up to a 12. And I'm like, you saying that? I'm like, wait, I have a flashback of my past life regression where I was great. I was getting in one life this energy from this blue planet and it would absorb into my body. And then I would move over to this timeline and I would be looking at the people and I was like on a stage and I would be infusing them with that energy. And I would see the ones that believed it would go to 12. The ones that were like skeptical or were non-believers, they would sit there and it would just kind of pull down there. It wouldn't even get to the 9. But what's your take on that? Because I was like, wait, that's flashing a memory.
Yeah, it's funny because I've had a similar memory. So wherever you're getting that energy from, I think is something that a lot of us have done before. But what do let me just feel into that. This is just what's coming. I don't know if it's super relevant, but what I'm hearing is there will be some of us that will activate the 12-strand DNA system and start the advancement of human potential, right? I mean, we're all gonna, I mean, it's just everybody's gonna evolve. It's
Right.
just how are they gonna evolve? I mean, look at if you can go over like back to the cavemen, like we've evolved since
Right.
then, right? And some faster than others. I mean, you can look around and see that there are so many different people and they're all in these different states. And it's the thing is that it is a choice, right? And some of us will choose it and some of us won't. And there's no right or wrong in that. And what I hear when you say with the ones that accepted it went, well, the same thing happens. Like when we choose to experience our body as a divine technology, we start to have that experience. But if you're choosing it and you're just choosing it from a place of ego or a deep program, you're going to keep leaping. So, what I saw when you said that was one of them was going like looping, and then the other one was like, oh well, I could have something else. And whether if they broke out of the loop or not, they advanced into a higher vibrational loop.
Huh. Yeah. I love it. Talk about Ormus and how, like, just going into the when you were following Rob and how they taught you. That was your first. Explain what, because I have Ormus in my pantry that I put under my tongue in the morning,
Yeah.
but now I need to get yours. Because something called me one time. I'm like, I need to get Ormus. But to explain that,
So what do you want me to explain?
what that does, like, why do you use that? Or what's the magic in that Ormus?
So what is ORMUS? Well, first, ORMUS stands for orbited, rearranged, unidentified substance, or it can also be ORME, which is orbited, rearranged, monoatomic element. So Ormus is a fifth dimensional element. I think it's interesting that if you look at it under a microscope, let's say a scientist is studying the element, it can say, oh, that's going to be an element of copper. And then all of a sudden it'll be there and it'll leave, it'll disappear, and then will come back. My dog in the background.
Yeah.
And so, what they are showing is that this multidimensional element is activating the pineal gland and it is lengthening the telomeres. It's reversing aging. And but for me, it's raising frequency.
Right.
It's raising the frequency of the body. So it's raising the frequency of our consciousness. I can say the first time that I ever took on Ormus, I definitely shift timelines and I experienced like a 20-minute car ride in like 2 minutes. It was the weirdest thing that I've ever experienced. I
Oh
wasn't
my
even
gosh.
trying to have it. I could see like my consciousness in the timeline of where I wanted to be at the same time that I was driving in the timeline that I was. And I was like turning around and I was looking at myself as I was driving. And then I could see myself like I was late to pick up my daughter from school. I could see myself pulling up in front of the school, but I was still driving on the highway at the same time. And so I jumped and I went into myself pulling up at the school and I got there in time. So what was normally like a 15 or 20-minute drive, I got there in like minutes.
Oh my gosh. Your Jules, your stories are cease to amaze me. Holy moly. Um, so okay, we're not our body, we're not supposed to die, we're not supposed to age. That's all loops. And you talk about telomeres, and we talked about this before because I wanted to know how old you were. And you had a test and explain it because you've created this line that I'm going to order everything on. And if I can sell it on my what podcast or sell it to people, I can sell that. That thing will be like off the chart. Everything on there is like, it's magic. Like it's just like you created all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ormus is, it all started with Ormus, really. I was coding it like they were telling me to. I was coding it with the different things and I was healing people in my community. I live in Colorado, and there's a lot of very active people. Everybody that gets hurt, they just want to get healed the fastest they can so they can get back on the mountain and do all these, their extreme sports. And so started putting the Ormus in a cream so that people could take it home and continue their healing process at home. And I sent some to my ex-husband, Craig, and he called me like a week later. He's like, "Oh my gosh, what is this stuff you sent me?" He's like, "Everybody thinks I got a facelift. All my wrinkles
I
disappeared."
heard that. I was like, oh,
And so I laughed because I was like, well, you're not supposed to put it on your face. You're supposed to put it on your body, but okay. He's like, well, you have to start a skincare line. And so, the Ormus is just one of those things that's so magical. I mean, I personally healed bones literally within an hour. And I have seen uh, people just, I mean, you almost can like watch it healing. It heals so fast. Just random things. I mean, from like cancer to road rash to broken bones. And does it do it every single time? Like, no, but it does sometimes. Sometimes it's just like, you don't think it's going to work and it still works. So I'm just going back to your vision of, do you have to believe in it for it to work? And if anything, I think it's one of those things where don't believe in it and just watch what it does because it's that powerful.
right. When you had your spine, talk about your spinal injury and how you laid on your healing bed and
Yeah. Yeah. So this was, I injured my spine in 2013 and, nobody really understood what was wrong. I ended up getting surgery, and when they opened me up and they had seen that my disc had ruptured and all of the nerves were extremely damaged. And so he did what he could, and when it came out, he was like, I did what I could, but you should have had surgery a year ago. He's like, I can't even believe that you've gone this long without it. And so basically he was saying that I was going to be paralyzed in my left arm. But I was still in an enormous amount of pain because of all the nerve damage. And so I was laying on my table and I just said, if this is how I'm supposed to be for the rest of my life, I will make peace with that. But if there's something else, then right now is a really good time to show me what that is. And it was like right when I said that, I'm getting kind of chills. I I just kind of went unconscious almost, though I was aware and I could feel this energy running through my spine. And as soon as it went through my spine, it all the bones in my neck popped. That's where my injury is. It's in my six, seven. And my consciousness immediately shifted to what I was experiencing, to being inside my cells. And then all of a sudden there was like every single one of my cells lit up, and I just laid there and had the experience. And then I got up and kind of forgot about it, right? I just got up because it's something I did every day. I got up, I went and grabbed my dog, we went walking, and I looked down and I was holding his leash in my left hand for the first time in over a year. And I started looking around, and all the trees were like glowing. I was like, oh my gosh. I became obsessed. I was like, I have to know what happened. I want to know. And I knew it was my cells. I knew something happened on a cellular level.
Right. Oh, I love that. Excuse me. So when you are creating these products and putting in that copper card, and then you have your activation cards. Let's go over all these magical tools that you have
Yeah.
created.
Okay, so yeah, so the copper card, I'll grab mine here. This is I would say this is one of our like one of our most famous, if you will. But this has the technology at the top. So each one of these codes is doing something, and it's connected to the scalar device. So when you press on the code, you're activating your DNA with that code. So each one of these does something different. So for everywhere from working with the universal laws to the organs and the bones, and each one even has an avatar that has a state of consciousness. So if you're needing to connect into a solution, let's say, you could go to the one and hit the innovator, and then you activate that consciousness and you have that experience. On the back, it has what we call quick shifts. So there's one for like anxiety. So you do the coding for anxiety, and it's activating that frequency in your DNA on a cellular level. So that's the copper card. And then we also have the same DMT codes in a card deck. So you can actually get the whole deck and you learn to read them, and you read them in a very specific way. So each of these codes, if you look at it, like they're all kind of round, if you will. They all have
Right.
that shape. And so, how they're designed is that you don't read them from left to right, that you actually read them from like on top of each other. And the more you work with them, you learn the language of them. They have a frequency that has a language. And as you master the language, your mind starts to think outside of timelines. So I'm going to give you an example of what that is. So when you are thinking, you think from in a sentence from left to right, right?
Right.
And when you start to learn the language of the codes, you start to communicate outside of a timeline. And so it goes multidimensional. And so you actually can hold thoughts that aren't from left to right, that they become spherical. And then your thoughts become spherical. And what ends up happening when you really start to master the codes is that you can tap into kind of multidimensionality, but live a normal life. So you can be within time, but not hold consciousness in time.
Okay, Jules. But when you are doing these, when I'm watching you in these on YouTube and you're showing them the cards and you're saying, close your eyes and visualize that code going into your pineal, into your third eye, and
Mhm.
watching it and like whatever is spinning. Like people come on and ask questions like, I want to get rid of my wrinkles or I want abundance. And you're like, okay, here's the code. And
Yeah,
you'll put, right?
yeah,
So
yep.
that's what they're
And then
doing. They're,
so then once you have the code, you can go and either just code just by watching the video, if you will, if you want to see look at the codes, or you press on the transmission here. Uh, so you can also, like, a lot of healers will use these, and you can get like a pendulum and scan for which code. So if somebody had a broken bone, most likely they're going to have 2, 3, and 4 as part of it because that's working with the fascia, the muscle, and the bone. But it's activating the frequency of bone at 963. So you're releasing the frequency of a healed bone from the DNA. The cells begin to identify within that frequency, and then you watch the bone heal. And even now, I've been doing this for a long enough period of time that when I hurt myself, I heal so fast that you almost start to question it. It almost becomes kind of eerie because it's just not normal.
Right. Do you take like supplements or are you just in energy?
So I take the supplement that I have. So it's called the particle accelerator. It's working with frequency. It's an actual physical supplement. So it has NAD boosters because that was one of the things I learned from Vale is that our mitochondria has its own DNA, and that when we activate 12 strands, our body actually shifts into the DNA of the mitochondria, and we start to, because the mitochondria DNA is actually round. And
Okay.
oh,
Oh, magic. I love
so
it.
he's saying
He's
yes.
saying, yes, yes, yes,
He's
Jules.
like, thank you for bringing this up. But so he said, mitochondrial health is one of the most important things that we can do. So doing things like taking a supplement that has NAD boosters, and so our supplement is an NAD booster, and it also works with frequency. So it's activating the frequency on the cellular level, so that you get both the frequency of the supplement, but also the physical aspects. That's the only supplement that I take.
Okay. And when you were explaining what you to tell people the story of the telomeres, and I look at them like there's the end of a shoelace.
Mhm.
And so when you get older, they kind of start to frail, they start to ravel. But explain your age and how when you took the test, because I think, you can touch the copper, you can take the Ormus, and people are like, when you have the actual scientific, report, like I'm thinking if my husband's listening to this, he'd be like, well, do you have the scientific proof? Well, yeah, she does.
Yeah, yeah, and we actually have a couple of ways of testing it. So I did the True Diagnostic age test. So you actually prick your finger, you get your blood, you send it to their lab, and I did one. And I came back as 37 years old. And so then I was like, okay, for 10 months, I'm going to take the supplement. I'm going to do my Ormus, and I'm going to code with my copper card. And then 10 months later, I took the test again, and my telomere age was 19 years old.
My gosh.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and just to give you a perspective of that, there is only 1% of the population that was any better than that. So there you can get it actually lower.
Wow.
how long they took them to do that, I don't know. And this was just in a 10-month period of time, which I thought was
Oh
pretty
my gosh, to go from
good.
37 to 19 in 10 months. Holy cow. So, the skincare and the cream, like your ex-husband, like couldn't believe it. But then it was like I was reading something about the eye cream and how the significance of the skin around the eye and how the eye, what explain that.
Well, I mean, the skin around our eye, first of all, is much thinner than any other area. And just to for all you ladies out there, if you don't know this, we never want to rub our skincare in under our eyes. We always want to tap. So I didn't actually know that. Somebody told me, and I appreciated knowing that. But Ormus, so what I love about it is that, and I don't know if this is what you were asking, but when we add the skincare that has the Ormus, one of the things that we can do, whether we use it with a copper card or we just add intention, but Ormus is intelligent. Like it hears you. It will work with you. So when you start to do things like erase my wrinkles, literally it will start to erase your wrinkles. Just like when you want to heal something and you're putting Ormus, okay, heal my skin, it will start to heal your skin. and you start to have a relationship with it. I know that sounds so
Huh.
weird, but you really do. And it will start to tell you what to do. And when you get to that place, you know you hit it because that's where we all want to get to. We have, we've been taught that, oh, just tell yourselves what you want to do. I mean, Dr. Bruce Lipton did, oh my gosh, like my hero. Like he honestly
Yeah.
is my hero. And, but when we start to activate the 12-strand DNA system and we move out of just basic biology, we actually want the opposite to start to happen, is that we want to turn on that 12 DNA system and that has an intelligence, and we want that intelligence to start telling us what to do. And then we start to move to the other side, and that's when we start to co-create with this intelligence until it can fully take over, right? And I know
Right.
that sounds kind of, everyone's like, what, so it's going to take us over? Well, it's taking over the part of us that we want it to take over.
Right.
Right?
Right. What do you see like in the next, yeah, I don't know, 30 years? Will we be in a different kind of body? Like, are we going to not be eating? We're going to be touching the copper card and getting our nutrients?
I absolutely, and I don't even think it's going to take 30 years.
Yeah, I was going to say 5, and I'm like, I better say 30.
It's already happening, and I'm just getting chills on that too. Uh, but I feel like what we're going to experience first is kind of timeline jumping, is experiencing our quantum body, our body is fully activated, and then moving back into this physical body, and we're going to be having the kind of like wherever we're holding consciousness, we're going to move in and out, and then we're eventually going to recognize that this is so much better.
Right. Totally. But,
Yeah.
just raising children, right? Like you've raised yours, and, you see kind of where they're going and what they're going to experience in life and how their bodies are going to be like I feel like even the babies coming in now are such a different frequency.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's amazing to watch and to see what's going to come from all of that.
Yeah.
So tell everybody because they're all going to want to take your classes. Is your book out yet? Your new
It's
book?
coming out. So yeah, I'm not sure when this is going live, but it's going to be out on July 1st and 2nd. We're going to do a Kindle release at 97 cents. And every time somebody purchases, we're going to activate DMT code 9 and 7 for planetary awakening. And so our goal is to get up to 111 in 48 hours. Hopefully we'll just like blow that out of the
You
water.
will. You will. Okay, so your book and then your classes.
Yeah, so the classes, you can just go to becomingbioquantum.com and you'll see the classes, you'll see the store, and we have a free community. We just have all sorts of stuff going
And
on.
you're having a retreat. I saw that
So we
in
have
New
a retreat
Mexico.
in September right outside of Santa Fe. I picked this place because every time I drive that part of the highway there, I always get the most intense downloads. And I made it a mission that I would find somewhere to do a retreat within that vicinity where I get the downloads. And I did. I couldn't believe it. I could find one. And so I'm super excited. It's very galactic and high vibe.
What is speaking of galactic, your connection with the galactics?
Yeah, the ones that I've been hanging out with since I was 5, I call them the blue men,
Hmm.
um, because they're blue, but they don't have faces, or they're just kind of luminous blue. But they do. I mean, you can see them. They have really long fingers. They're about that long, and they're very real. Some people see them, um, but
When you say you hang out with them, like when you're in meditation or what?
oh no,
They
they
come.
hang out. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah,
Like they come to your house.
yeah, one time, this is like after my spine injury, it would like every once in a while I would still get like pain would come, and so I was very limited in what I could do for a while. And one morning or one night I woke up because I thought somebody came into my room and turned on the lights. And I opened my eyes and there were like 50 of them in my room, and they glow, right? They're bright.
What?
And one of them came over and had, I mean, these really long fingers, and he's like coming towards my neck. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And he's like, don't be afraid. And then as soon as he touched me, I passed out. But he was doing some work on my neck.
And that doesn't scare you?
I mean, it definitely scared me, but they aren't scary. It's like their frequency is so high. It's almost like it's more of a shock than scare. But now I'm so used to that it doesn't shock me
And
anymore.
the reason you connect with them is because your frequency is so high.
They just have always I always called them my star family. So I feel like they're part of my family.
Are you close to your mom and dad?
I am.
So they've forgiven you for doing drugs?
Yeah, it didn't take too much longer until we started having a relationship again.
What about your children? What is that like having them with what you know, and how do you parent?
Yeah, so my younger daughter Rose is actually working for me now, and
Oh, wow.
she's working, and then my older daughter is we actually just all went to a concert together at Red Rocks, and they're very, they just were born at a higher frequency. And I used to always tell them, you don't realize that most people don't think the way you think. And I know that's hard to understand because you only know what you know, but what you know, most people don't. And so it was kind of growing up in that place of reminding them that most people don't think through and create conscious choices. And then have a choice and then step back and observe and see the different patterns of where that choice is going to go. You guys just naturally do that. Most people don't. And so it was an interesting way. I raised them in a very unique way, and they know that, but they didn't really understand it until now. And now they're looking back on it and it's like, okay, now all that makes sense.
How was it with friends? Was it hard for them to connect with other kids their
I would say my
age?
younger daughter, it was a little bit more. She was very, like, she wouldn't have a friend unless it was an authentic, close friend. And so she had very few friends. But Sage, my older one, was kind of the opposite. She would just be friends with everybody and was
Oh,
very social. And she was a prom queen. And they both were high level athletes. And so they spent a lot of their free time in playing volleyball.
oh, neat.
Yeah,
Oh,
so they had
yeah.
normal childhood. I mean, as normal as you can get.
Right. But when you meet person like you who raises children, because I'm super into that. I teach mindset classes in San Diego at different schools. And so that's a passion and why I asked that question. But also because I'm a mom and have raised my girls in that intent. Yeah, the kids don't know that what they know. And sometimes we laugh and think not any better or worse, but it's just really cute to see them at this age understanding the things I planted now more like coming up. Like, here's the flowers. I see them blooming. They got it. I didn't know when you don't know when you're planting during their childhood if it really is going to make this like, the light bulbs come on.
Yeah, I always thought the most powerful thing I can ever teach my kids is how to make a decision and exist within that decision without doubting it. I mean,
Ah,
I just knew that that was one thing that I had is that they knew to how to make their decisions. So I actually stopped telling them what to do once recognized that they could see consequences of their decisions. I stopped telling them what to do. I mean, they had no rules. They learned by making decisions, and some good, some bad, but they never got in trouble for making a wrong decision. But what we did is I taught them how to look at their decisions and the ripple of frequency and where it would lead them. And so I taught them how to see like through their decisions.
oh, wow. I love that. I've never heard that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I hope everyone listening gets that one tip from you, Jules, because, I feel like the world these days, with this, what they're exposed to. the social media and all the technology and everything, and to be able to see the world and how powerful they are and the decisions that they do make lead them down the breadcrumb trail.
Mhm.
And every time they pick one up and see what decision that was, and if it, the choices that we make.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's powerful.
it is.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being someone that I just learned so much from, and will take your classes and all you vibrate in my frequency of my soul remembering you or something, because it's just like getting up to meeting you. I just knew it in in my body. It's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. And I've been doing this for 5 years, and I feel like I'm almost to 300 episodes, and it's it's so cool to look back to see the impact of each person and you have a podcast too,
Me too. I'll have to have you on it.
but you realize, like, having a podcast and having this time with, like, if I could have looked at your website, I could have heard you on these podcasts, I could have listened to your YouTube channel, your podcast, gone on your website, but it's not the same.
Mm.
It's just it's like it fulfills me so much. It really is like amazing to me. So thank you, thank you.
Ah, thank you.
Anyway, have a wonderful day, and I appreciate you, and I will see you. We will be connected.
Thank you.